Hi, I'm Rich Lee from the Hall Institute of Public Policy, and we're at the New Jersey State League of Municipalities Conference. This is something that the Hall Institute has been taking part in for 6 years now. Since we first started, it's always been a good event for us. Initially gave us an opportunity to get more exposure, to tell people about the Hall Institute, and every year one of the nice things is we meet more and more people who are familiar with what we do as we sit at the booth. People come by, say they've read articles on our website, they get our newsletter, and it's really great to have that face-to-face contact. We do a number of things while we're down here besides meeting people. We like to take advantage of the fact that we're coming in contact with people who are following events in New Jersey closely. We usually do some sort of a survey. In the past, we've done straw polls on elections. We did one on the presidential election, one on the governor's election. Last year, after the governor's election, we did a poll on media. We asked people how they first learned that Governor Christie had won the governor's election. We wanted to see if they were getting their news from the internet, from TV, from radio, from print newspapers. This year, we're kind of looking at an issue that we've been examining closely, which are the state's gaming industries, casinos, horse racing. We're asking people for their opinions on the idea of putting slot machines at the Meadowlands. We've gotten quite a few responses. We look forward to tallying them out. And one new twist we have this year is, we're doing video. We've been interviewing people as they come by our booth. We've been fortunate, a number of people have been kind enough to chat with us about what's on mayors' minds, what are the top issues for local officials down here, what they see as the solutions, what they see as what may happen in the legislature. It's been an interesting time so far. We look forward to the rest of the conference, and we hope you enjoy what we've done with the video this year. There's legislation, the governor's toolkit, some other bills pending in Trenton. Are there particular parts of that package that are going to be most useful to you?
Well, certainly for mayors, from the mayors I've talked to and from my own perspective, we are very interested in seeing arbitration reform. I certainly believe in collective bargaining. I know that the units in my community, the bargaining units in my community, have been very receptive to the idea of helping us save money to stay under cap. However, there are times when there are legitimate disputes, and arbitration is a tool that needs to really be reformed in a way that gives towns, I think, a little bit more leverage. Now, that being said, the other measures in the toolkit all will contribute to helping out towns, but I know that in my particular, for example, the salary cap being one toolkit item, but in my town, even a salary cap would not fully address our problems. In a town such as mine that has ratables issues, where we don't have highway ratables, no one has real estate ratables anymore, we, I think, are going to need to have a little bit of state aid transitional funding to help us get through these difficult times. Otherwise, you're looking at layoffs on a large scale.
So this year, as you talk to other mayors, other local officials, what's their number one priority? What's on their mind, and maybe what's on your mind as a mayor as well?
Probably number one for everybody is staying under that 2% cap levy. Levy cap. I always call it cap levy. But yeah, that's the number one thing. How do you do it? And part of the problem is that the information has come out sort of in dribs and drabs, and the toolkit that the governor's proposing, I think only one piece of it has been approved, so far. So that's a big thing. It's okay to play the game, but you got to know the rules of the game, so you can play it properly. And I think that's the other mayors that I'm talking to, that's their big thing. Fine, whatever the rules are, don't really care all that much, but you got to tell us what the rules are so we can play the game and do it properly.
I mean, what do you need to stay under that cap? Is it all the bills that are in that toolkit, or there's some that are more important to you than others?
Civil service reform is a big one for us. We are a civil service community, and it just doesn't work for us. Political appointees have still been put in, and it wasn't necessarily from the politics that got it. It was just the power structure that we had in our community for a while. And that's really the biggest thing that I would like to see, is if we can get rid of civil service, I think we would be in a lot better shape.
Given whether that bill, other bills in the toolkit, are you optimistic that they're going to get through the legislature? We have a Republican governor, Democratic legislature, they're frequently at odds.
Something will get through, there's no doubt. The question is what it's going to be like by the time it actually comes out. every bill that you look at, from what is initially proposed to what it actually comes down to when it's passed are two different things.
There's a lot of talk politically about the legislation that the governor has proposed, the governor's toolkit, which right now I think a little bit of it is starting to work its way through the legislature, but given the politics down there, a lot of people are not optimistic that it's going to go through. Are there bills in there that you think would be really helpful to help towns?
Beyond the toolkit, yes, the toolkit is necessary. The toolkit should have been passed before the cap law was passed, but that didn't happen. So we need the toolkit, because there are tools in there for every town. Not all the tools will work in every town, but that's why we need the whole menu. S1 needs to be passed so that the towns can get away from these obnoxious co-obligations that are just killing towns. Civil service towns have to be given the option of getting out of civil service. And when we talk about doing things fundamentally different, we're talking about them coming up with a new way to deal with pensions. There's no government organization that tells a private business what pension they have to offer. Why do we have a government operation that tells municipalities what pension they have to offer? Why can't a town decide for themselves what their employees are going to be offered as a retirement package, if they're going to be offered a retirement package? At what level will they contribute? Those decisions are all made in Trenton for municipalities, and municipalities have to raise that money in taxation and then fund those at the levels the state stipulates. That's a fundamental change in the way we do business. Nobody's talking about that, but that's what needs to happen. Things like that need to be brought up.
It's more than just tweaking the system, it's really like just starting out.
If they passed the entire toolkit, there would still be more than 100 towns in a state who would be struggling with how to make that cap work. We need more tools in the toolkit.
What are you doing this year? I think you were on one or more of the panels. Were you?
A couple different things. I sat on the toolkit panel, which was, probably had 600-700 angry mayors.
A lot of people talking about that.
Yeah, they had a ton of mayors that were there and asking a lot of questions. And I guess the recognition as they get into striking their budgets. That was sad, I guess, for them coming out of there, is that if we were to adopt the governor's toolkit tomorrow in toto, taxes are still going up, and they're still going to have a difficult time in meeting the 2% cap. So I think a lot of recognition of reality came out of that meeting today.
You're echoing what the last person I interviewed said, that if every piece of legislation in the toolkit got passed, mayors would still have a tough time.
No question, that's the case.
Budgets, You mentioned at your panel, a lot of angry mayors about the toolkit. What are they angry about? That it doesn't go through enough, or doesn't go in the right direction?
I'm not sure what it is. I think on some level there's the perspective that's been coming out of the administration that if you pass this, everything will be fine. I think the reality is starting to set in that even if it was, it won't be, and that they're going to have some real difficult decisions to make in the next year or two. That's going to lead, frankly, to people losing their positions, to the level of services not being what the community might be used to, and maybe a little concerned as to who they're going to take it out on. It's no fun. You don't maybe go into these positions to begin with and for adulation. If you did, you'd learn to play the guitar. You go into them because you want to improve people's lives. So being the person that lets people go, that cut services, isn't probably what anybody has any great designs for being.
As for the issue at hand, what do you think is going to happen in terms of local governments and finances? I guess they're all struggling to come in, bring their budgets in under this 2% cap. The governor's toolkit legislation is in the legislature. We don't know what's going to happen to that.
It's hard to see that the toolkit, even if it does get passed anywhere close to what the governor wants, will really have much of an impact in the short run on property taxes in terms of a reduction. I do think that the 2% cap has both put pressure on local government and county governments to find ways to economize and so on, and that's a good thing. I think there's a political expectation out there, but I'm afraid that people will be disappointed because I just don't see how their taxes will not go up more than 2%. I don't know, maybe the municipalities, and it would be helpful to have the counties more involved in this than I think they are. I think the municipalities are feeling the heat and are really trying to find ways to cut back, although it's probably at the margins. But it's hard to know what impact that will have in terms of the legislative races that are coming up in 2011. I think the governor is such a good communicator that anything that he gets on his agenda it'll be sure to be out there, and the Democrats will get beat up.
Yeah, he's definitely been very effective at doing that.
And so it's not just what's accomplished, but sort of how it's communicated that will have an impact. But I think it's really hard to reduce expenditures to the level that people will really feel like their property taxes are less.
Yeah, and your observations about the toolkit, or what I'm hearing from a lot of people, is that it's not the panacea. It's some good legislation, things that'll help, but there's a lot more that needs to be done to help out municipal governments.
Right.
We're going back to our study of various media issues, asking them how they get their news about New Jersey, how that may have changed over the last 5 years.
5 years is probably. It's changed so dramatically in 5 years. I'd be willing to say, how's it changed in the last 5 months almost? I really, at this point, get most of my New Jersey news through Twitter feeds. That's where I get my news. I mean, it's amazing how in such a short amount of time that one social media has really taken over. It's ideally suited for political news. Political news is already, by its very nature, very viral. People love to right away pick up the phone and text or call, and the Twitter feed allows you to do that on a bigger scale. In fact, there was a piece of information that I today read from I think it was either NJN or maybe Roll Call, the DC site, that I then copied and retweeted to my followers. So that's probably the most recent innovation. And then I think, like every other elected official in New Jersey, I'm regularly on Politicker NJ.
We get our New Jersey news, I get mine personally from the web. I have a bunch of Google search targets for me that tell me about anything that comes up that I'm interested in, certainly auctions, real estate. I do go on to NJ Biz and any of my local real estate websites.
Okay, much more so than you would have, say, 5 years ago, where you
absolutely
going to hard copy publications back then.
Yeah. So it's targeted mail. I'm busier than ever, and if I can get it delivered to me with exactly what I'm looking to read, it will help.
I was in information technology for a long time, and most of my information comes from the internet. Be it the League of Municipalities website or their magazine, or State of New Jersey's website, and things of that nature.
Okay, but how about news about what government is doing? And do you go to those websites? Do you go to news websites?
Sometimes. It depends on what the hot button is. If I hear that there's something out there that I really need to look at, I will look at it. The particular legislators' websites I will look at upon occasion. But it's more internet than anything else. Sometimes I see something in the paper which will make me go to a website, to look at it a little closer.
Well, we're really lucky in New Jersey because it's such a small, highly populated state. There's a million places to go to it. So my day begins every day. I'm reading the Asbury Park Press, which is my local paper.
You read it online or the hard copy?
I read a hard copy every day. Most days I read a hard copy of the Star Ledger. We do have a number of news services that Patriot retains, so we get targeted news based on our clients or projects that are important to us. And I think, like everybody else, the internet is really reinventing the way we get our news and how we get our news. And the editorial content of that news is going up, because what's a news site anymore? Even MSNBC, it's a news site. It is a news site depending on who you're reading, or Fox News is a news site depending on whose blog you're reading or who's giving you your news. So we have to be even more aware of that. I teach political science at Brookdale Community College, and I tell my students, it's not as easy as opening the paper and giving a quote. You might be quoting a maniac in your paper, because who wrote that blog or who wrote that? It looks like a news website, maybe it's not. So it's getting harder for us to, not just me, but everybody, to weed through your news and decide what's fact-based and what's opinion-based, and how we got it. Maybe the easiest way is not the most reliable way.
What is it that you so like about the hard copies?
I think I'm an old newsie. I need to feel the ink on my hands. I don't get people who read books off a Kindle. I need a hardcover with pages to turn, and I can dog-ear it and make notes. So there's something about a tangible print that I need.
The biggest difference is, as opposed to the newspaper, the Star Ledger was probably a big piece of my New Jersey news for a long time. we get the same source but online. And online, interestingly enough, has driven me to be able to equally browse some of the other regional newspapers around New Jersey. So pretty much I get my Jersey news online, webcasts like yours, and it's not fair to ask any of us because we're all kind of junkies.
Right, yeah, you're a little different maybe than the average citizen, but we're getting a wide range of perspectives on that.
Let me just tell you about something that I learned from 7 young people who were taking a course on Congress at Rutgers, because I was really struck by this. They were asked to add to the study that we had already done of the gubernatorial and legislative conference, and we asked them to read 4 newspapers and to keep track of the stories about the congressional races. Well, they didn't read, when they turned this in, they didn't read the newspapers, they read their websites, okay? And then they categorized the stories and so on. But I was struck by the fact that their means of getting the news was the website, but everything they were reading had been written to be in a newspaper.
Print edition.
Yeah. And so I think we still need to think about what newspapers are doing, but then the way people get the news is clearly changing. And if the newspaper dies, do we have the capacity to create those stories that people are now reading on the web?
Yeah, and so much of it is aggregated onto these news sites, and people say it has to originate someplace, and that's really the bulk of it. I think still originates in newspapers.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. I now find myself going back and forth depending on where I am and what kind of time I have. I enjoy reading the newspaper. I like the tactile feel, but I also realize that it's very efficient to check on the NJ.com or even the New York Times.